Hi, I'm Ryan Bridge, and I'm excited to host a new podcast called Bridge Talks Business with Milford, where I'll be talking about, well, business, obviously. Every week, I'll be joined by one of Milford's team of analysts, fund managers, and financial experts to cover key business events. It'll be your go-to for insights on the markets, business, and the economy, both here and overseas, as we dig a little deeper into the business week. Join me for Bridge Talks Business with Milford. Subscribe on iHeart or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. All discussions are informational only and should not be considered financial advice.
You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Ball right-hand side, they've got numbers, the Wallabies. Tom Wright reaches out, right the try, and the Wallabies will have a chance to try and win this game out of nowhere.
Yeah, that try was converted 31-28, so a final few nervous moments for All Blacks fans before the result was finally secured. Let's get you across the Tasman for an Australian viewpoint from Wallabies legend David Campese, who joins us now. David, 31-28, do you think the Wallabies will look at this one as one that perhaps they let slip away?
Yeah, mate, I think it's the way the game started, it looked like the All Blacks were going to just win by 50. But then, obviously, I've never seen an All Black team really make so many mistakes. And obviously the first two tries that Australia scored were pretty simple, especially defensive errors, which is very unusual. But again, the Wallabies came back well. They they put a pretty good performance. We've got some really good individual players, but we still haven't really gelled properly yet. And I just think it might take a while, but I think it's also interesting to see the way the All Blacks have played. I mean, they were up by 21 points, I think it was, and it was like the game in South Africa. They were up by 20 points in the first game. Most All Black teams or past would make it 40 points. And they just don't seem to have that killer instinct or that resolve to make the opposition really suffer. They just sort of took the foot off the pedal, made some mistakes, and brought the Wallabies back into the game.
Why do you think that is? Why haven't they got the killer instinct? That's been a trademark, a hallmark of All Blacks teams down the years.
Yeah, look, I'm not really sure. Look, I know the game's different now. And there's so much more, there's so much more gone into the rugby. Like, there's so much more analysis and there's so many more different coaches. And just as like a simple thing, if you watch the warm-ups of most teams, they do the short little passes to warm up, but in the game they don't do the short passes. A lot of them do the spirals. Just a little simple thing. So it's when you get out there under pressure, and you could see, even Damian McKenzie, some of the passes that went to ground, which is very unusual, that level, and that flick pass he tried to throw in. He didn't need to do that. It's probably just, I don't know, again, they're still probably learning as a unit to understand each other, which other lines they run. And I think Beauden Barrett was missing badly as well. I think Jordan's a very good player, but I think he's more of a finisher. He's not really a creator, and I think that's where Beauden Barrett sort of adds that extra spice to the back line.
How far away do you think the Wallabies are from challenging the top 3 or 4 sides in the world again?
Well, I just think it's just interesting that we've brought another Kiwi coach in that really, what I would thought by now that it would have been great if he sort of tried to understand what our culture and history was and why we were the Wallabies and what we were good at. We've got some really good individual players, but we keep on changing 9 and 10 around week in, week out. And that's, as you know, in most games, 9 and 10 are the general. They're the connection between the forwards and backs. And I think that he still doesn't understand, I suppose, our mentality. Like, we do really well in that game yesterday. We really came back. But really, when the All Blacks were down to 13, why didn't we try and run it wide? Because there was 2 backs missing. I think because our Super Rugby's not great, and obviously the next generation coming through, which they don't really watch a lot of rugby, or they haven't really got a lot of idols who they want to be like, because most of it obviously in Australia's rugby league. And I just think that we just need some players to come through and have the skills, but also have the confidence to try and gel and play, and probably get the basic skills right and play a bit better than we have been playing.
Do you think he's the right man to coach the Wallabies?
Well, unfortunately, mate, I think he was the only one available at the time, and I think that sometimes we panic. We haven't really got a setup in Australia where you've got a system where we bring all the young coaches through. Most of the young coaches have to go overseas, and another coach now is a guy called Chris Latham. Helped Samoa in 2019 Rugby World Cup. Can't get a start in Australia. Didn't want him. Goes over to America, makes the final. Lost the final this year, unfortunately. Then a couple of weeks later gets another job over there, and not one person from Rugby Australia is interested in him at all. They don't speak to him. They don't want to see how he's going. Is he interested? That's our problem. We don't sort of look after our own. And I think also, if you notice in the world rugby at the moment, you got Robinson, coach of the All Blacks, played for New Zealand. Rusty Erasmus played for South Africa. Borwick played for England. Townsend played for Scotland, and the French coach, obviously, he played for France. And we've got a coach that is a New Zealand. I don't know if he actually played for New Zealand. Obviously, he's a good coach, but at the moment, we were number 1, 2 in the world for years and years by playing a certain style. But he's brought into our game like mauling the ball from 22 metres out, which is not really our style of game. We've got to go back to what we are known for. But again, if the guys haven't got the coach's ability to play the game and try things, we'll probably be stuck in this situation for a couple of years.
Are there any? You mentioned Chris Latham. Are there any other Australian-born candidates to coach the Wallabies right now?
Well, look, I think there isn't really, because we had a couple of South African coaches. You had Brad Thorne, obviously, he's retired as well now. You got Les Kiss, who's a rugby league player. I don't think he's ever played rugby, but he's doing the Reds. And now we've got Cat coming in from England to do the back line. And obviously Czech was around, was available, but he's now in England, and he's obviously at Leicester and enjoying his stint there. Just got there. So, again, all our coaches are going around the world. It's obviously you've got to be part of a certain club or something that gets the jobs out here, because, we need to look towards the future, as we've got the Lions next year and we've got 27 Rugby World Cups. So we've got a couple of massive years coming, and we need to be in the 1, 2, 3 position. Otherwise we'll probably struggle. And, with League and Aussie rules in Australia dominating week in, week out and entertaining people, we need to play a style of rugby that we entertain the people and people come to watch. And at the moment, it's just not happening.
Just one final one on aura. It's pretty hard to define, I know, Campo, but your teams of the early 90s had it. The All Blacks have had it at various stages. Once you lose an aura, is it possible to get an aura back?
Look, I think it comes from the team. I think also what's very different these days, when we played, I know it's a long time ago, but we would have the same 15 for probably 10, 15 test matches, unless someone got injured. You never came off, because if you came off, you'd never get another run. Now, you got 40 minutes players, you got 60 minutes players, and we saw the South Africans lose to Argentina this morning, by a very close margin, because a penalty goal, and sometimes it's just the smallest margin of error makes a difference. But the All Blacks have always been known for start off very strong in the first 10, and they sort of foot off the pedal. The last 10 minutes before half-time, they'd pile on the points. Second half, 10 minutes, pile on the points, take it easy, and if they have to, at the end. But now what we saw yesterday was a total different team. Yes, they got a new coach, still understanding. Again, they've lost a lot of experienced players as well from last year. I think a lot of teams have. And you need the guys to stand up, you need the experienced players. And I think that's where I think South Africa at the moment is miles ahead. They've, obviously Rusty's a very smart guy. He has plans for the future. I think they can, but again, this morning was a simple penalty goal, 2 shots that, win and lose games now, so at the top level. So, like, the All Blacks, it'll come back, but they've just got to understand, it's like in the Wallabies, you've got to understand why you're playing for your country. And, and I think that we saw Clark in that towards the end. He didn't have to do what he did. The All Blacks' discipline has been normally unbelievably good over the years and years, but in the game yesterday, the discipline was very poor, which is very, very unusual. And again, that could be down to the leadership on the field. and obviously new coach, who knows? But, they're just not the same as they have been for dominated rugby for many years.
Interesting times on both sides of the Tasman. Thanks for your time this afternoon, David. Really appreciate it.
Well, mate, I'm in Wellington next week, so it's not a good hunting ground for the All Blacks at the moment, so you never know, it could be a bit of a surprise. Why are you playing in Wellington anyway?
Well, that's the question being asked over here. It's a bit of a graveyard, as you say. We should play everything at Eden Park, David. You know that.
Yes, I know. That's a long time since we won there too, but yeah, I understand. Righto.
Good on you. Thanks, David. David Campese there with his thoughts. What a player. What a player he was. Some interesting thoughts there too. Clearly not a fan of Joe Schmidt. Coaching the Wallabies, would prefer an Australian to do it. He made the point about the coaches at various other places having, played for that country. I often think to myself, how would we feel if a non-New Zealander coached the All Blacks? It may well happen one day. I think we've got a decent production line of coaches who I'm sure will helm up our All Blacks for quite some time. But over in Australia, it's not the first time, is it? David Rennie had them, didn't he? Eddie Jones is Australian. Look what he did with that team. So I'm not sure that nationality is the be-all and end-all. Clearly, David Campese not a fan necessarily of the way Joe Schmidt's going.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.